Good afternoon. As Chair, I now call to order the November 16, 2023 meeting of the Equity Committee of the Board of Education of Baltimore County. In accordance with Board Policy 8311, the Chair of a committee at their discretion and after consultation with the staff liaison may convene an in-person committee meeting. Otherwise, all committee meetings will be held electronically. Today's Equity Committee meeting is being held virtually and broadcast through Microsoft Teams. In order to efficiently conduct this meeting, all voting items this afternoon will be done by a roll call vote. Board members will say their names before making and seconding a motion as applicable, as well as when requesting discussion on an agenda. Additionally, as a courtesy to the committee, I ask that you inform Mr. Handy or Ms. Seabolt if you must leave the call by using the Teams chat feature so that a quorum can be maintained. Ms. Seabolt, please call the roll of the board members to determine the presence of a quorum of the committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ms. Drummond?
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Frempong? Ms. Lichter?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Delusty? Dr. Savoy?
Present.
And Ms. Harvey?
Present.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Seabolt, I'm sorry. The first item on the agenda is a special education strategic plan, and for that I call on Ms. Allison Myers.
So, Dr. Savoy, I think so. We're referring to the script from a previous meeting. Let me make sure you have the script.
This was the script that was sent to me today. This was the script that I got. It has a date on it.
Okay, let me check what I have and forward you. Let me see if I got today's script.
Okay, somebody's playing games. Okay. All right, you're right. It's not the right one.
Do you need me to resend it?
Yes, please.
Sending it to you now.
And the bottom part says January 18th, 2024. So it's just a big confusion. I'll send it to you, Mr. Handy, so you can see what I'm talking about.
I just resent the script, so you should have that momentarily.
Okay. Okay, I see what happened. The top part of the script says November 16th, 2023, and the bottom part is saying January 24th, January 18th, 2024. So I think it got mixed up some kind of way. So do we have a speaker for tonight, Mr. Handy? I'm sorry.
No problem, Dr. Savoy. We do. And then I guess before we get into our speaker, I know you called, or Ms. Seabolt called the roll for our committee members. Could we just turn over to Ms. Seabolt to call roll for staff, and then we'll be ready to go with the rest of the.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Handy. Okay, so Mr. Handy.
Present.
Ms. Charlie Green.
Present.
Thank you. And I know we have some guests with us today. Ms. Domino.
Yes, present.
Okay, and Ms. Logman.
Present as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other staff members in attendance that I did not call? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, because this the script is kind of mixed up here. So Mr. Handy, if you would take over at this point until closing.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Savoy.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome. Again, want to welcome everyone to our Equity Committee meeting for today. I am honored to be joined by my colleague, Charlene Domino, who will be handling the bulk of today's presentation. I do want to start off and frame this presentation a bit, also remind the committee and also anyone viewing the meeting, really the connection with today's meeting and then a previous meeting we had as well. So this is really a follow-up to our November 9th meeting, which was a meeting of our Equity Committee and also the Equity Council. During that meeting, we focused on one of our 4 priority areas for BCPS, and that was highly effective teachers, leaders, and staff. During that presentation, the committee members had some questions around recruitment, and we had some members from our HR staffing team that answered those questions. Committee members also had questions related to our professional development schools, our teacher intern programs, and things of that nature. So for that, we invited Ms. Domino to really give us an overview of our intern program and PDS program. So before we get into that presentation, I want to talk to you a little about some I guess, high level work, if you will, that we're doing around recruitment. So if we can go to the next slide. So, again, this is our outcome for today's presentation. So the committee will get the updates on highly effective teachers, leaders, and staff in accordance with that focal area of our 4 priorities for the system, and they will increase understanding of professional development school partnerships and current opportunities. Next slide, please.
Good afternoon. This is Ms. Stolewski. I'm now in the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you. Welcome. All right, so I'm very happy to report this is some rather recent developments, as you see, from November and December of 2023. Dr. Rogers, our superintendent, had meetings with university presidents, or the presidents were not in attendance. We had representatives from the universities that you see listed on the screen. And for anyone listening with just audio, I'm very happy to read, the names of these schools representing our universities in Maryland. So we have Bowie State, Coppin State, Goucher College, Johns Hopkins, Loyola, Morgan State, Stevenson, Towson, and University of Baltimore. And in connecting with these representatives and presidents of these universities, we've started some critical partnerships that will lay the foundation for where we'll be going forward in working with our schools that have programs that help to train individuals that want to be teachers. Again, the work that's occurring going forward is going to entail what you'll hear Ms. Domino present, and also really some new and exciting partnerships that will result from these meetings that have occurred here recently. So very excited about the possibilities that will stem from these connections. Certainly will bring back some updates to this committee so you all can hear about the work that's going to take place. But certainly wanted to start with framing, where we're headed as a system and some recent work that we've done to go in that direction. Next slide, please. So one of the questions that came out of the November meeting that I alluded to was around, if we look at our current professional development schools, so those colleges and universities where we get interns from, what's the breakdown? How many, given our schools, how many interns do we get from each school? So this is a breakdown for current school year, 2023, 2024, and you can see that breakdown by school. I do want to point out the first 2 schools you see listed, Bowie State University and Coppin State University. You'll recall that those were 2 of the schools that Dr. Rogers had been meeting with representatives from, from those institutions. So because of those meetings, because of some new energy, some new direction that we're taking, we have some potentials for growth. So when you see the numbers here listed, you see, current state. But remember, since these interns were placed, since the school year started, we have those meetings that we referred to in November and December of 2023. So we've got some potential growth based on these early meetings that we've had with Bowie State University. And right now, we're looking at a possibility to have another partnership, another growth opportunity with Coppin State University. So again, you have current state here, but we also are anticipating larger numbers and other opportunities that will be indicative of partnerships that we're forming with these two universities in particular. All right, next slide, please. All right, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Domino for the remainder of our presentation.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thoughtful Thursday, as I like to call it. On the slide that we are looking at in front of us, we begin by looking at our population, the students in which we serve. Whenever we meet with our university partners, community members, and or our educators and mentors, as well as our institutes of higher learning, as you heard me reference, we begin by putting at the forefront the population in which we serve. Because if you have served Baltimore County Public Schools, like many of you in this space, for over 20 years, you know that our diversity is a strength and it has continued to change over time. We can move on to the next slide, please. So we also, whenever we have our meetings, and 3 examples that I will reference on this slide that are taking place this year, some of them have taken place in the past. One of them is actually new that we are beginning in January. Every meeting that we have, we also begin by referencing our equity policy, bringing it to the forefront and making certain that the decisions that we make are taking into account the need to ensure equity across our system. So when we attend PDS meetings or we host our meetings this year, if you were to rewind the clock several months ago, we hosted a PDS meeting for new principals and new site coordinators. We reference our equity policy. Where on the slide where you can see call for cohort proposals, we have a meeting with our institutes of higher education in which we present our system needs. And in reference to the presentation, as you heard me say, equity remains at the forefront. The intern orientation that is referenced on this slide, and you heard me reference previously, will take place in January. It is a virtual opportunity that we will be hosting for interns that are beginning in the spring. And our intent with this offering is to be able to introduce our interns, the ones that are starting later in January, to the vision and the mission of BCPS, as well as the teaching and learning framework, but also to provide our interns with resources that they will be able to use during their time with BCPS. So for example, we will be providing them with a weekly overview, a weekly checklist, so to say, that they can use to see if they are being productive and meeting the needs, as well as a resource that they can use for reflecting on time management. Next slide, please. When we reference PDS partnerships, and I know that we have vast experience in our space because many of you have served in public education for a great amount of time, we like to point out that there are, as listed in the Maryland Blueprint, that there are more than 300 teacher prep programs in the state of Maryland at 23 colleges and universities. And we are really fortunate to have the partnerships that have been established. And as you heard Mr. Handy share, that we look forward to additional partnerships in our future. Next slide, please. So we also ground ourselves in the review of what actually PDS means. And so when you review the information on this slide, it is important to note the reference to continuous professional development. When we reference PDS, Professional Development Schools, we want to ensure that the members of our teams, the site coordinators, as well as the institutes of higher learning, as well as the teacher mentors, as well as the principal, are all committed to providing a professional learning opportunity for the individuals that are involved in the process. Next slide, please. So when we talk about how PDS is a part of our partnerships with PDS schools, it is important to understand that we attend PDS council meetings and we also attend advisory boards. And the meetings that we attend center equity during our discussions. So you can look at this slide. So the first question is, how can we increase the number of teachers of color that are entering the programs? This question is actually representative of a recent discussion that we engaged in at our CCBC advisory board. The second question, are we ensuring that educators of color are included in the conversations as well? Represents another discussion that we had at the recent CCBC advisory board. I can tell you that we are proud of the efforts of Principal Jennings, who is the principal of Rossville Elementary at BCPS, who serves as a contributing member to this advisory board as well. So strong partnerships with our institutes of higher education and our individual schools characterize the placement process of interns. The process involves communication between the school site coordinator and the representative from the Institute of Higher Education. It is also important to know that we also ask for the input of principals. We ask principals, we have a list within our office that exists to be able to provide us with looking at your staff, looking at your faculty, looking at your culture, to be able to identify teachers that are highly effective and will be able to provide and serve as mentors. Also asking them to look outside the box with an understanding that while a teacher might not be ready at this point in time to accept an intern, that he, she, or they might be willing to accept an intern in the near future. So it is important also to understand that institutes of higher education are required to diversify their placements in alignment with the Council for Accreditation of Educator Preparation. And so, for example, Towson University just went through the accreditation process. Congratulations to them. And the representatives from the LEAs, including myself, were a part of that process in which they gather input and feedback from the local LEAs in terms of the effectiveness of the program. Next slide, please. So we know from the previous presentation from our partners in HR that the work that we do in our office really supports the Maryland blueprint. We are pillar number 2. And if you look in the center of this slide, we are really dedicated to making teacher preparation much more rigorous and integrate induction and teacher preparation systematically. Our office is currently working on a new teacher induction plan, and we look forward to providing additional opportunities for our teachers once they become a part of Team BCPS. Next slide, please. So you saw a previous slide that Dr. Haney referenced in terms of partnerships that we have. On this slide, we can see the PDS partners that currently are in existence. It is important also to understand that while this slide represents the PDS partnerships, the professional development schools, we also have placements of interns from a vast variety of local colleges and institutions, which were referenced previously at the start of the presentation, that aren't labeled or aren't necessarily, they don't refer to themselves as the professional development school. Next slide, please. So there are critical roles besides that teacher mentor, because ultimately the teacher mentor is the main interaction that the intern will have on a day-to-day basis within a school. But we need to also understand that it is critically important for the principal, the representative from the Institute of Higher Learning, as well as a site coordinator that exists in each school and also has the responsibility to create a professional development plan that is reviewed by our office at the beginning of each school year. Next slide, please. So this year, we looked at the efforts of BCPS in terms of our commitment to engage, empower, and excel the members of our community. And previously, as you heard me reference, when we hosted a meeting for new principals and new site coordinators, we looked at the responsibilities and roles that are associated with each key stakeholder and really looked at how the efforts match into the categories for engaging, empowering, and ultimately, what does it mean to excel? So we look at, in order to excel as a principal of a professional learning school, that you really have that strong commitment to instructional leadership, that you work diligently with the members of your staff to create and plan meaningful professional development, that it is also an entire school commitment, but we also look at, and in the Excel piece, as a culture of inclusivity, and that is listed, it should be there on that slide as well. That is an addition that exists when we move forward with talking with our key partners. Next slide, please. And so we look at, well, what do we expect from the representative from our Institute of Higher Education? And beyond the engagement of the school and with the connection with the Institute of Higher Learning, here when you would look up online and you would look at resources, you would find that the ultimate goal is to be able to place 5 or more interns in a school. That is a goal to be able to have, so that interns have an opportunity to communicate and collaborate with one another. But we understand that our times are very different than they have been in the past. So you might find that it is not possible to place 5 interns in a school. You might have less than 5 that are placed in a school. But when we look at the role of the representative from the Institute of Higher Education, their role is to develop their educators, to work collaboratively with the school. And in order to excel, that communication is key. Next slide, please. And then we have a site coordinator. You heard me reference previously. The role of the site coordinator is to be the representative of the school in terms of communicating with the Institute of Higher Learning. And the site coordinator ensures that there is a plan that is based on the needs of the school, and that the interns' goals are being met in terms of meeting the needs and expectations of the university partner, as well as communicating, as you heard me say, with the stakeholders within the building. Next slide, please. So, on this slide, we know that our HBCUs, we do have a partnership with, as referenced previously, Morgan, Coppin, and Bowie. We have an admin cohort that is in currently existence with Coppin, and we have several that are in existence with Morgan as well. We also have cohorts with Bowie as well. And you heard us say that the information that was presented at the beginning is sort of a baseline. We'd like to increase the opportunities that we have available to be able to place interns in our schools. And we have to be cognizant of the reality that does exist in terms of the decreased numbers of students that are going into education as a field. Next slide, please. So if you look at the number of fall interns that we have, and it was referenced previously from our HBCU, from our total placements, in the fall we had 471 interns. That does not mean that the interns are graduating in December, but that is our total allotment. Some of them might be in the beginning stages, so they return to us in the spring. Some of them are finishing in the fall. We know that less than 10% of the total placements were from our partners with Bowie and Morgan State University. Next slide, please. So this slide actually references where our student interns from our HBCUs were placed in the fall. And next slide, please. And we continue to look for opportunities to engage and make a tremendous impact in terms of our need to increase our not only teachers that go into the profession, but a specific and strategic focus on providing opportunities and inviting teachers of color to join our system so that our students are able to see and relate to individuals that they see themselves in. On this slide, we have a reference to the National Center for the Elimination of Educational Disparities. There are local representatives from LEAs that serve as contributing members to this group that has been established. I myself look forward to working with this group of individuals that are committed to the work and the efforts that need to continue to ensure that we have equity within our programs and that we invite welcoming and establish cultures for our individuals that seek or maybe haven't thought about becoming a teacher, but we understand the need to be able to provide the opportunities for them in our future. I would also like to add, in the previous presentation from your last meeting, I know that the question came about as to in the fall, in terms of the work of our human resources, how many teachers joined BCPS. From the individuals that finished their internship and were graduating, there were 62 advanced contracts that were provided, and 23 interns signed an advanced contract with BCPS. Okay, next slide, please. And now we will take any questions up for discussion, anything that I can help you or provide. We look forward to getting you the answers to.
Hi, this is Mrs. Harvey. I just have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Harvey.
So, in the very beginning of your presentation, you highlighted that in your meetings, in your workshops, that you go over the equity policy and you put equity at the forefront in the work that you're doing. Can you talk about operationally how that's done and how you measure if it's yielding the results that you seek or if it's effective?
Sure. I would say that what we do is we look at making sure that, number one, our individuals are placed in school settings where there is a culture where they will be able to feel embraced and be invited as contributing members to have a positive experience. We provide the connection, as you heard us say, with a teacher mentor. And you heard me reference, like, historically, we have a list of teacher mentors that serve in the capacity. But it's important to look at who that we haven't considered in the past, as well as engage in those conversations between the site coordinators and the representatives from the Institutes of Higher Education. We review survey information that is provided to the leaders of the schools through PDS Council. So we receive input and survey data from the experiences of our interns that is reviewed by our university partners. And we will use that in terms of making changes, considering things differently, looking outside the box. Like one example that I shared was the infusion of an intern orientation that we have not necessarily done in the past. That has come about from engaging in discussions with representatives from not only the Institutes of Higher Education, but also our representatives from that serve in the capacity at our local or our LEAs. So we talk about how can we provide them with the support right at the onset of their experience so that they understand that the commitment is there and that we want and are committed to ensuring that our students are provided with opportunities as well as the interns that we place within the schools.
It's Miss Lichter. I'm not sure if Miss Harvey's in a bad cell, but I'll jump in right now until she comes back on, unless she's there. Miss Harvey? Okay. Can you hear me, Miss DeMimo?
Yes.
Okay. So on slide 4, you listed the number of universities that we are have partnerships with interns or student teachers. And I appreciate that. Now, the ones where it's very low number, and if you said this, I apologize, where you only have 1 or 2, is that because it's such a small department, or why? I mean, they're
Yes,
so
it's
low.
actually, it's multifaceted. So the slide that was the slide that lists the total number for each institution. It really is dependent upon a variety of factors. So in terms of the placement of interns, a lot of times interns are placed and the institutes of higher education will request a specific geographic location because they will say they need the candidate to have a place near their home. Okay, so that's one facet of it. The other facet is in terms of the numbers, it is representative in some cases of the lower number of individuals that are enrolled in the teaching programs. Like you might hear like a principal would ask why I used to have so many interns in the past, but right now I don't have as many. And the response that has been provided by our local universities and institutions are that's because they don't have any. So that is a reality, as we know, across the nation, that individuals aren't going into the teacher prep programs. And so hence that has an impact in terms of the hiring of non-conditional teachers because individuals aren't entering into teaching as a profession. So when I referenced previously, and it's like 2 months, about a month and a half ago, you heard me reference the CCBC advisory board. They talked specifically about that, and especially about the need to find teachers of color and what they were trying to do and rethink their efforts. And what they referenced is site visits, trying to go out and advertise and communicate, thinking about how to entice, candidates to go into the teaching profession, but also once the students that are enrolled in CCBC programs that might be undecided, they look at having conversations with them and also put some work into their mentorship opportunities to be able to try to entice and enhance individuals to go into teaching that might have not considered it before.
Okay, thank you for that. And on the next slide that showed the percentages of our population by demographics. I think it was slide 5. Do you have a comparison about our interns? So if we have, I don't know what that adds up to, 300 interns right now, how close are we? Because I know we're trying to get more teachers of color, and if we trickle down, then we need more interns of color and of different demographics. Do we have any data on the demographics of the interns?
So and I know that in the previous presentation, HR said, when they are going through the hiring process, it's illegal to have that information.
Right.
In our database that is provided, the information that is provided us by the local colleges and universities does not include race as a column of information. So our office is not provided with that information.
Okay. And I get why we can't, but it just would help if we knew we're working towards what we're trying to. But I guess we're kind of stuck there. The other thing about placing interns where they live, and I understand that as a point of convenience, but does that help us get people where we need them to be? So I know we're kind of stuck because we need teachers to come in, and the more barriers we put in place, we're making it harder. But I just don't know if that, how much that's helping us, or is that, hurting us in the long run?
Absolutely, yes, I know.
Yeah. But thank you for this information.
Right.
There's that awkward pause again. Mr. Handy, did Dr. Savoy want you to facilitate the meeting?
Let me just, okay.
Are we done? Okay, because this script is all wrong and I don't, Mr. Handy, you can take over from here because we're going to talk after this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right. So just want to see if there's any other board members with questions for Ms. Domino or myself.
No, it was a great presentation. I was wondering why, one question, you didn't include the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. It is an HBC.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yes, so we do not have any teacher interns right now from the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, and I thought the same thing and previously in the past, and I would assume it's because of the location. That's what stood out in terms of my mind, because when you look at even Bowie State in terms of our fall placement, we had 3 interns, and a lot of times it goes back to where the candidates are able to where they can report and how they can serve in the capacity.
I see. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Are there any more questions? I now turn the meeting over to Mr. Handy.
All right, thank you, Dr. Savoy. So there are no additional questions. I know our last item is announcements. Let me see if I can. I think our only announcement is our next committee meeting. So let me just confirm that. Okay, so our last item on the agenda is announcements. The next Equity Committee meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 22nd, 2024 at 4 p.m. The next Equity Committee meeting with the Equity Council is scheduled for Thursday, March 21st, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. Is there any further business?
Did you say March 24th? For the council?
So let me confirm. March 21st will be the next meeting with the Equity Committee with the Equity Council. The next meeting of the Equity Committee is on February 22nd.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. All right, is there any further business? All right, hearing none, Dr. Savoy, with your approval, I will adjourn the meeting.
Yes, Mr. Handy.
All right, thank you, everyone. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.